this is what's frustrating is like this is great if you do it, and if there are teams that want to just shed salary, you got to be there. I mean, look at how many teams this year were desperate to get under the tax that were giving guys away. Norman Powell being one of those, like, and that was a guy who I actually liked, and I thought, there were a lot of teams who were just, I got to get under this threshold. I think last year at this
You
deadline
missed opportunities.
was a real good opportunity to buy, but they were so hell bent on staying below the tax, and now they're okay to spend it because they wanted that windfall to come back to them. Well, again, hindsight and all that, but I mean, we were saying it at the time, you know, that was a mistake, and at the end of the day, it might have cost you a championship. If you weren't so worried about it last year, you might have been able to pick up better assets. Sure, you would have had to pay for it, and you wouldn't have gotten that refund check. But then you wouldn't have to worry about going and overpaying and spending $90 million potentially on a Duncan Robinson type figure, because now you've been given the clearance to. So I don't really understand the thinking behind, that. To me, you should always just be looking at, if teams are if the poorer teams, the non-contending teams, the teams that their number one goal is to not pay tax, want to give good players away, you have to be there and scoop them up. And I felt like that was an opportunity last year, and they kind of mucked it. So the end of the year and the new year is a reset. People are willing to, throw some money around and spend some resources in order to try and improve themselves. It's an open marketplace, and everybody's a buyer. At the deadline, very few teams were. Very, very, very few. So now you've got a lot of competition. It's a strange strategy just to save a buck, and which is why I say, like, an owner should never, ever, 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 ever think with their wallet at all. It's just, if that's your game, sell the team, to someone who's not going to do that, because
Plus,
they're
let's
they're
talk
opening
about
the
this.
door for people to buy. The teams that are willing to spend are going to have a huge competitive
This is
advantage
why
over
I
you.
always hated it. Remember Danny used to say, "Oh, the off season, it's much easier to do a deal in the off season," but when they'd kick the
I
can
totally
down from the
disagree.
deadline. Yeah,
I
because
mean, yes
you
and
have
no.
this you have this
Yes and
hard
no.
cap restriction now, so you can't, guys that were under
Right.
contract at the deadline who are free agents now, you don't have access to, like Jalen Brunson, Beal potentially too. There's different names that you could have maybe gotten in on that part of the season who just you can't contractually get in on now. And like you just mentioned, the competition is much higher.
Yes and no. Everybody's involved now, and you're right. There's more. You're sometimes paying a greater. What their point is, you're paying a greater premium at the deadline because you've got two, three, four guys available, and eight teams who are willing to overpay because they're knocking on the door and they think they're one player away. So I mean, sometimes it is. This just was one of those years where it wasn't, and you have to capitalize on that. You have to recognize the opportunity, and they didn't recognize it. So
Yeah, who
that's what
went?
happened.
Powell, Covington,
Yeah,
a number of different guys we
there are
liked.
a bunch of guys that you'd be thrilled if you were able to get now with TPEs and whatever. That that not.
It's unreal what they cost themselves last year by like backflipping over the tax. And again, everyone, all these cap people are saying, "Oh, they avoided the cap like it was some big accomplishment," or the tax rather. You cost yourself a lot by avoiding the tax. And what do you gain? Instead of paying the repeater tax in 25, you're paying in 26. What's the value on that? I mean, that's beyond Tatum's contract, even. I mean, there was no need to avoid the tax last year. So, again, I don't know. Did the Spurs want Richardson? Maybe they did. Maybe they said, we want him because we can flip him into another first this offseason. But if you could have kept Richardson and the Spurs didn't even want him and you just want to dump him because it matched salary and you keep this TP here, what was the point? Because now you're looking for Richardson. Oh, it's so ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Like, if you were able to acquire Richardson with the TPE for nothing, wouldn't you be like, that's a pretty good find? If for a portion of the TPE, you'd be like, yeah, that's
They
a
did the
great.
same they did the same thing with Fournier. They added Fournier, they split the TP in half for no reason, flipping out Theis because they needed to offset the cost and avoid the tax, and then they brought back Theis at an even
They,
bigger number
they bring
later.
back Tice for a bigger number. Yeah.
You look at all the moves they've made over the years to avoid the tax and cut
Sh
salary,
shipping
and
Cantor
everyone
out
has killed
alo
them.
shipping Cantor out along with Desmond Bane to avoid the tax and then bringing Cantor back, you know?
I know,
Ugh.
and that was even if bringing Cantor back was a good move, it just looks so ridiculous, and it wasn't a good move in the end. Uh, it's crazy. It just goes back to just pay some tax. It's not killing you. What did they gain? They've been out of the tax since 2019. And what did they gain? They were contending in some of those years. They were certainly contending this year. Oh, it's so ridiculous. And now they're
Yeah.
in a worse spot trying to get back into the tax
So
because they
that's what I
can't
mean is
add
like,
anything easily.
so again, I hate this whole like we are willing to do whatever it takes. You kind of missed an opportunity to have done what it would have taken, perhaps to have won a banner last year, and to have
You could
set
even go
yourself
back to Hayward.
up for success moving forward in a better way. So now you're okay with it. Well, you should have been okay with it all along because you've handcuffed your team in so many times over the last 3-4 years with this just slavish insistence on staying below the tax that you've thrown draft picks away for nothing just to stay under. Nothing. Just tossed them away. And it's insane to me to be selling off first round draft picks to be able to get under the under the tax threshold.
Yeah, I mean, do you
Insane
really
to
think
me.
the Spurs wanted Richardson? I mean, come
I
on.
don't. I don't
They
think it
probably
mattered.
didn't.
They wanted the picks.
Yes. I mean, they took Langford and they're probably gonna
So
move on from Richardson now.
so if they are willing to do it now, then I'll say, why did you wait till this long? I don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah, I'll give some credit to the Richardson people. I didn't think it was that important to keep him around. He certainly would have helped, and long term, the
He
salary would have helped for
maintained that
sure.
shooting throughout the year. He finished the league, I think, top 10 in 3-point shooting percentage. Again, not some of the volume of some of the top guys in the league for sure, but he kept that going all season long. He was a valuable guy and a team desperate for that. I mean, desperate for a shooter and somebody to spell the Jays a little bit. And again, if you could have found a way to keep both, you might be having different conversations. We might be having totally different conversations right now. And they friggin' loved him, and Tatum loved him. You know, like he was a good
This is a
teammate.
great point here too of like the fallout effect of all this, and I know B Rob wrote about this a year ago or so. That whole Fournier misuse of the TP too screwed up your whole Beal pursuit if that's what you want to do.
Yep.
Because you could have kept kicking it to the future with those trades to the point where you would have had a Beal sized extent TPE. So you would have basically
And
been
gotten him
absorbing.
with nothing but draft picks, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, they've screwed this up. And again, in the end, you're in the finals, so you kind of walk backwards in the success here just because of how great
Yeah.
those draft picks were from Tatum, Brown, Robin, Smart.
What
But
somebody on
around the
Twitter
edges, you're screwed because of it.